we're alive. Oh, somewhere, somehow we all learn to hide it. Don't show the fire in your soul, just keep it inside. Yeah, keep it inside. Oh, hiding away in the darkness. Oh, but the sunlight, it fights to get in. Break down the walls that I built for myself. I'm so vulnerable, I wanna let go. I surrender. I'm tired of fighting the demons inside me forever.
Hello. Welcome to this month's Fireside Chat. I am Arielle Silver, Program Manager at the Sona Foundation, and we do these monthly Fireside Chats in partnership with our friends over at Backline. These are conversations every month about kind of subtopics under the larger umbrella of mental health, and we love talking with songwriters. I'm a songwriter. Terra Lopez, who I'm about to introduce to you, is also a songwriter, and these topics are so important. They're just human experiences, but as artists, especially people working in a strange field for a lot of people, these conversations are always rich and nuanced and meaningful. I think every month after the conversation is over, Tara and I look at each other like, wow, that was so great. And I know for myself, I just feel richer for being a part of these. So thank you for being with us for this month. We are talking about side hustles, which is also a topic near and dear to my heart as a songwriter and the program manager at the Sona Foundation. First, I want to tell you about the work that we do. We primarily create programs in mental health, financial wellness, and career development for songwriters and composers to support the individual working in this industry. And we also have different types of relief grants that become available at different times of the year as we gain funding and as the need arises. So if you are interested in learning about any of our programs or interested in supporting the work that we do, I encourage you to visit sonafoundation.com, and I will put that in the chat box. And this monthly Fireside Chat program is part of our mental health initiative. And I am going to bring onto the screen Terra Lopez. She is Community Manager over at Backline. Hi, Terra. Happy to have you here.
Hey, Arielle. How's it going?
Very good. I'm, as I just mentioned, these are one of the highlights of my month, and I'm just grateful to be here with you again. I'm going to take myself off the screen so you can introduce what you guys do over at Backline and then bring on the guests as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, like Arielle mentioned, we're talking about side hustles, how to balance them, and also all of the emotions that come with being in the industry and trying to also make ends meet. I'm Terra Lopez. I'm the community manager, head of artist partnerships at Backline. As most of you probably know by now, Backline's a resource hub for the music industry. We provide mental health and wellness resources to those in the music industry and their families. And we've teamed up with the Sona Foundation for these special chats to talk about mental health specifically for songwriters. Today, we have some very special guests. Katt Rardi is a singer-songwriter known for her cinematic style and emotionally driven music, making her mark in the indie pop scene. She continues to make strides in her career writing for other artists while spending time in the studio and working on future releases. I'm very, very excited to talk to Katt about her experiences juggling side hustles and whatnot. We also have our very own Arielle Silver, who is also a singer-songwriter who has juggled side hustles for years and still does as a yoga instructor and as the program manager for the Sona Foundation. And lastly, we have Backline Clinical Director Ari Jacobson, who is monumental, as you know, in helping us grow our clinical referral network around the country. So let's get everyone in. And awesome. How's everyone doing today?
Good. Very good.
Good.
Thank you so much for having this chat, Arielle. It's really fun having you on this side of things, to talk about side hustles and the emotions that come up with them, and also, how difficult the music industry can be in trying to make ends meet while also pursuing your passion. So let's just kind of dive in. I would love to know, Arielle and Katt, how long you've been in the music industry, and if you currently have a side hustle or a day job, and if so, how do you manage that balance?
Katt, why don't you take it?
Oh gosh, okay. First of all, thank you for that lovely introduction. What a nice bio that was. So I've been an independent artist for almost a decade now, which is really scary to say, but it wasn't until probably about a year or two ago. I've been in LA for 3 years, originally from New York. And it wasn't until a year or two ago when I realized being an independent artist also meant I was the boss.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of when I stepped into this whole new power of like, wait a minute, I'm hiring all these people to be here. Like, hold on a second. So my main side hustle, although I feel like I've done everything under the sun, my main side hustle was always bartending. And when I moved to LA, and the reason I moved was to just be around more artists and grow within the craft. And I realized that I didn't have to quit my side job to fully be an artist, that I could use my side hustle as a resource to fund my artistry. And also the places that I worked were so supportive of me being an artist that they let me use the space for music videos and release parties. So I was like, wait, I can just take this, use it to fund my artistry, and also use it as a resource for other things. So that was probably my favorite thing that I got to do with my side hustle.
Katt, I love you said something. First of all, I love the fact that the places where you worked became resources for you as venues. That's awesome. And then the other thing you said that I thought was really interesting was how, I forget how you phrased it, but you said how empowering it was to like you were in control of your artistry. I love that. And yeah, I think for myself, that is a large part of what a side hustle has allowed me to do, to feel like I can still retain full creative control over my own art and how I decide to present my work, present myself as a songwriter and as a singer-songwriter. Having side hustles of different types over the years has taken some of the pressure off of the artistry in some ways. It's like I can retain that creative control. So right now my side hustles, I'm the program manager at the Sona Foundation. I'm adjunct faculty. I teach creative writing at a university in Los Angeles, and I teach yoga. And I released my first album in 1999, and so have been trying to navigate this strange world as an independent songwriter for a long time. I took that first album, I would say, it's not available anywhere, thank goodness. And it was definitely, I think when I look back on it, it was a self-driven educational experience. Like, how do I make an album? How do I approach this project of a selection of songs and, compiling it together and recording the recording process and everything. And in all of the years, I ended up taking about a decade off, somewhere in the middle of that, because having this is an odd career. It's not like you go to medical school and then you have a residency and then you become a doctor or whatever the pathway is for those types of things. This is, as an independent artist especially, it's very self-directed and kind of it's like, oh, here's a Lego piece. I'll put that there, and I'll put, even the career itself is a creative endeavor, and sometimes that's awesome, and sometimes that's extremely exhausting. And so there was a period of time where I was just completely burned out, stepped away, and it was then that the side hustles, I guess, became the main gig. And then when I came over to I started working with the Sona Foundation, it's an organization that's completely run by songwriters. It's the vision behind the Sona Foundation originally came from songwriters. And when I found them, they actually thought it was a great thing that I was a singer-songwriter, that I'm a touring songwriter, and that I'm doing this work to create programs for songwriters. I don't know. There's just something like, it was so validating and celebratory. It's not like I had to hide what I was doing. Like, okay, I'm working for the Sona Foundation, and I'm not going to talk about the fact that, okay, I'm on tour right now. They know when I'm on tour, and it's, I don't know.
I ran
wonderful.
into that when I moved to LA and I was looking for my bartending job, and I was like, yeah, I'm an actor and a singer, thinking it was going to be so well received. And they were like, yeah, so you're not going to show up to your shifts? And I was like, no, like, I'm actually super reliable and communicative, and I'll let you know if I can't come in, and I'll find coverage or whatever. But they were like, yeah, join the club, basically. So it is really refreshing when you find that management and that team who is on the same page as you and wants to support that, as opposed to kind of, like you said, not, or you had to hide it sort of. Like,
yeah, I can really relate with that. Before working at Backline, I was a music publicist for 8 years. And that company really loved that I was an artist as well. And that, I would tour a ton while also still working full time. And it was, and now with Backline being an artist, I feel like that Backline views that as such an asset as well, because I know the actual experience. I know what folks are going through on the road. And it is so refreshing to be able to work at a place where you don't feel like you have to live a double life or hide parts of yourself, which I definitely have had. Like you, Katt, I've worked in some places where it was kind of frowned upon because of the lifestyle or whatever beliefs they had. So I can definitely relate to just feeling, like having to hide, but also how great it feels to not have to. And when those creative sides are embraced. You all mentioned, Arielle, you mentioned burnout and exhaustion, and Katt, you mentioned, realizing you're the boss and you have all that power. And with that power, that definitely, comes a lot of responsibility. How do y'all juggle, having to work side hustles, day jobs, while also being the boss role in music and in your career, and still having the motivation or time or creativity to do what you do?
Go ahead, Katt.
As you said, burnout, I was like, oh yeah, the burnout is so real. So I try to give myself grace with that, because last year I went really hard. I was working 6 days a week and putting out a music video or a single or working on my album. And everyone was like, how are you doing it? And I was like, I don't know. And then I crashed. So I will say, when the wildfires happened specifically was when I took time to kind of be like, okay, I'm going to take this time to, just be with my family and rest. And then I found it really hard to get back on that track since then, even now, 6 months later. And so I think having grace for yourself, and also what I do that helps me a lot, when you are the boss, there's no one that you have to answer to. I actually had someone kind of say something negative when I was talking to a producer about needing one of my masters back. And he said, well, what's the rush? You don't have a label to answer to.
Wow.
I said, well, I'm the label. I'm paying you. I am the deadline. Hello. Like, I need my song. I need my master. So I've definitely struggled with that as well, where people don't take me as seriously because I'm not a label, or because I haven't been signed yet, or whatever it is to them. But what I do to keep myself on track as much as I can is just honor my own schedule. So I will sit down and I'll say, okay, Monday I will be writing, and if nothing comes out, that's fine. Tuesday I'll be in the studio recording vocals. Wednesday is content day. I'm making content all day. So just trying to make up my own schedule of some sort, as best as I can, and honor it. And just remembering, I'm the person that has to get up and make that artist schedule. and fit it around the side hustle schedule.
Mm.
So I think I did a really good job of that last year. I'm working on getting back into it this year, but rest is just as important as all the rest. So, you see artists, big artists, take years off at a time before they come back with an album. And when they're hot, they're hot. The Jonas Brothers did their album and then a huge tour, and then Joe did a solo album. So when you're hot, you're hot. And if you're not, take a nap. Like, it's okay. Tap into your resources, spend time with your family, like go to the beach. It's okay. Try not to beat yourself up.
Oh, refreshing to hear that. Thank you so much. I do feel that, like, as creatives, we constantly need to hear that is okay to do. Arielle, how do you balance those dualities?
Oh my gosh, Katt, you just made me think about so many things as you were talking about that. It took, I think it's taken my whole life. I'm constantly refining, but going from back then when I got so burned out that I thought I was quitting. I thought I had quit. First of all, I thought I had failed, and I decided to quit. And it took about a decade for me to reframe that narrative of failure and to realize I hadn't failed. I had actually succeeded in everything I had wanted to do. It's just that I had been working so hard at trying to achieve whatever that vision was that I didn't realize at some point in time, it's like the whole time I had been hiking up a mountain, for years and years, hiking this mountain. And I felt like I failed because I couldn't see the next part of the trail, I guess. And what I didn't realize was, sometimes you get to the top of that mountain and you have to just like sit down for a while and look out and, kind of check in with yourself and look at the vista for a while and imagine like, okay, now where do I want to go from here? Instead of getting to the top of that trail and thinking, oh, I just came to a dead end, and that's how I felt back then. And then the burnout, I because I had framed it as failure and was burned out, I thought this is the end of that, and I need to find another career or another passion, another outlet, whatever it was. So I would say that was really rock bottom for me, in many ways, and it took a lot of time to recover. But in the recovery phase of that 10 years, I got to know myself a lot better, myself outside of being a performing singer-songwriter. I developed my yoga practice, my creative recovery practices, my meditation practice. And all of that stuff later is what led me right back to being able to be a songwriter and now to be able to be on tour. So it's like the things that I found while I was completely lost are actually the things that now I do on a daily basis that keep me from getting lost and to notice when I'm feeling, just to be a little more in touch with the micro shifts inside me. Like, oh, I'm feeling exhausted right now. What will either help me rest or rejuvenate? Is it that I need to go to sleep, or do I need to eat a good meal, or do I need to go for a hike, or do I need to go see some live music, just get inspired,
Can I ask you a question? When you said like you felt that moment of you felt like a failure. Yeah. Did you feel like, because I know for me, other people have told me so long that I was struggling, or the struggle is real, or the starving artist, or whatever. So even when you say the word failure, I don't know if my version of failure is because of other people telling me that it is, if that makes sense. Oh, keep going, you're going to make it. It's like, well, where's the finish line? It's like, because like you said, like, it's not like, oh, you go to med school and then you do, it's like, so where is the finish line? So you kind of start to like invent your own finish line where it's like, okay, for me, if I complete my first album as an indie artist, that's my finish line and I'm happy. So it's like, where does it end? And how can you deal with other people constantly looking at what you're doing and saying those things, sort of like projecting those narratives onto you and separating yourself from what other people are saying?
Ari, I think that's a great way to get.
What was the question for Ari?
And I just want to
ask that, actually. So thank you so much, Katt, because I was going to say, you know, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of failure, internalized failure, those feelings. Why do they exist then?
Say that one more time, Terra. I didn't miss the last part.
Why do we internalize that?
Oh, sure. But before we get to that, I just want to point out, it's really an interesting kind of perspective. And Katt, you just mentioned something like, you know, it's not like med school. And I did not go through med school. I went to school to become a therapist. But as part of our ability to be able to practice, you have to have 2 semesters, which end up being about 1,000 hours of internship. And I can tell you that from my experience and from those that I know, 1 out of every 1,000 internships pays. All of them are pretty much unpaid internships where you are working anywhere from 20 to 30, 40 hours, depending on a week, depending on what your ability is to section off time, because it is expected that you are going to be working some other job, or you're going to join a program that encourages you to work another job. And so in this field where, like you said, in the music industry, there's no like supervision, there's no like path, there's no guidebook, where I could very much on a Google Doc just map out like, okay, first you're going to go to school, you're going to take these classes, then you're going to find an internship, which will be hard, but here's how you do it, and here's how you get your hours. Then you get your hours, and this time is unpaid in your life, but by the time you get here, that's your salary. Mm-hmm. And so just the perspective on what a side hustle looks like in like the medical field or in other industries compared to the creative spaces, where nobody ever said to me like, oh, you're in school, you're working 3 jobs while you're also working an unpaid internship, and you need help paying your rent. Oh, you're struggling. People looked at it as like, wow, you're on the path to be successful. Where those in the industry are just like, oh, you've been doing this for what ended up being 3.5 years of very, very low income. People are like, after 3 years, haven't you given your hobby a chance? And now isn't it time to look for something else? And so just the perspective of this like idea that your creative success or your creative input is only based off of the financial income that you're getting can lead back to what we were just talking about and asking these like ideas of stress, these ideas of anxiety, the idea that everything that you're putting out has to cater to a larger mass crowd because it needs to pay the bills, where once you can separate the idea of my income and my creativity are one and the same, then as Katt and Arielle, you said, like, now I'm funding my own creativity. So if I can do a side hustle and make an extra whatever dollars a month, doing bartending or whatever it is, now I can put out an album that's a little bit more obscure, a little bit more my creative expression. And if 2/3 of the people listen to it, then I don't have to worry about that gap. So really being able to just kind of focus everything in a different perspective of like, you're on this journey and you are invested in your career and you're invested in your creativity. And even big investors for big, gigantic companies have to go out and resource from different organizations to help fund a project. So you're just you're helping other organizations pay your bills to help eventually fund your creativity.
Ari, I love what you were just saying about your career and, people on the outside, when they see that you're doing the internships and you're on this path to be a clinical director of Backline, or a clinical counselor, whatever it is, it's like the people on the outside, everyone looking in on your life is saying, oh, you're on the path, and they have a measurable, they have markers where they can say, oh, now you have your career, now you have your job, and it's a harder thing for outside people to measure for us as songwriters and as singer-songwriters. And that was interesting for me to hear you say that, because it's hard for us on the inside to know, especially when we're getting all these messages from the outside, to know when we have, like Katt, what you were saying, it's like, are we there yet? But it's like, sometimes I think, if I were to go to Paris, if I'm going to go to Paris, I have to like look at a calendar and, look at where Paris lies on the global map and kind of make a plan for how am I going to get there? Am I going to fly from LA where I am to Paris, or am I going to ride my bicycle to Salt Lake City and then hop a bus, down through the Plains states and, somehow like make my way to the East Coast and then maybe take a boat to Europe. It's like there are a lot of, there's like the direct way to get to Paris, and then there's the road trip journey. And this career is a lot of a road trip. And I would, sometimes I have to remind myself that, why do you go to Paris anyway? Like, why do any of us travel anywhere? It's not just the destination to arrive in Paris. It's like, the whole journey of being in Paris and going to the museums and eating the food and the cultural experience. And maybe you get a couple of weeks there if you're lucky, and then you journey home. And I don't know, I feel like a lot of us dismiss the transportation to get there. We think that the vacation starts when we get to Paris, rather than, it starts when we start to imagine what a trip to Paris might look like and how am I going to map it out, and then what am I going to do, like the whole journey, the pilgrimage of it. And being in this career is very much all the time like, I am on a journey, and I maybe have set my final destination as being able to play Red Rocks, or to have this many listens, or make this much money, or any of those measurable like metrics that we can kind of write down those numbers like, I know when I have gotten there. We can set those things, but really they're just to help us point our compass in a particular direction, and then say, okay, and now I'm on a journey. And this career is very much a journey, and in a way that's a blessing, because what else are we writing about anyway? Like, what are our songs about? Like, songs are about something like where am I now and where do I wish to be? Or where am I now and where was I then, looking back? Or what is the tension between what is and what will be, or what I hope it will be, or what it was? And it's like songs themselves are journeys. And so doesn't it make sense if we look at our careers as journeys like that?
I love that. I mean, when you say it like that, I'm like, yeah, why do we look at it in any other way? But
I just want to say, to go back to the side hustle for a second, it's like, okay, well, now we've got to now, since it's a journey and we don't know, about the metric, like when will we achieve that money, or that, the ticket sales or the album sales or whatever it is. It's like, okay, well, then the side hustle helps to, keep that boat afloat, or that, fuel in the tank, or whatever it is that we need, just to bring it back to like, oh yeah, we're doing the side hustle.
Yeah, I think, just to put it, the way I think about it is that your side hustle, it creates, sustainability comes over time. The longer you take and the more intentional you are with building something substantial, then that is what's going to stick. If it's just kind of, even, you think like a small one-hit wonder where you're able to just like pop something out really quick, it hits it, and then it kind of fizzles out, and you don't have the ability to continue, the momentum that you've already built. So your side hustle is kind of just adding more into that squirrel fund of allowing that sustainability to happen over time, and not feeling this pressure to rush everything to that very specific, like, if I don't have it by June 1st, then I have failed. So, the goal is to stay in this as long as you can.
I just want to say too, like, how you were saying you can measure, okay, which it still stinks that you have to do an unpaid internship, but I won't even go there. But like, okay, if I put this amount of hours into this internship, I can get to the next tier of my career. It becomes so difficult because I also am an actor. So how many studio sessions, how many self-tapes, how much work we do, quote unquote, unpaid, quote unquote, for free, how many scripts I'm reading, how many things I'm doing, where in any other industry, I mean, a script consultation, for example, would cost money, or like a songwriter could charge an hourly rate. So it's like, sometimes people look at me and they're like, wait, you're not getting paid for that? Like, how many unpaid internships will it take to get to the center of the Tootsie Pop? Like, it's like, you don't know. Cause like people look at me like, wait, you're in the studio for how long? And you don't even know if this song's going to make you any money. Like, you don't know if you're going to get a cut. You don't know if it's going to end up on the radio. That's of course not why we do it. But at some point you have to make money doing what you're doing. So you have to eat. So it's like so hard sometimes to explain to people, not that I owe anyone an explanation. People look at me definitely like a little crazy where they're like, you're not even getting paid for that? And you don't know if you're going to make money off of it? I'm like, no. So, but there are ways, because I think being in the industry, people think, oh, you have to make it as a musician in order to, it's one of the few things where people look at you as making it means being famous. Making it in this industry means being a millionaire, or winning a Grammy, or being on the radio, where you can easily go on Sound Better or Gig Salad or whatever it is to find those side hustles. Or I have friends from New York who play live shows 5 days a week, and they make an honest living, and they make great money, and they can fund. So, to me, that is making it. But other people look at you and say, well, you'll get that Grammy one day. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it'll never be enough, will it?
I will say, just because I definitely have I've had those conversations so many times in my life of friends who aren't in the industry and just don't understand that, like, most of the work you do is unpaid and unseen, and it's very necessary to get better at your craft. And I will say that it's just something that, what keeps me going is just, I've been signed to the major labels. I've gone on I've played in front of 10,000 plus folks. And that isn't, I'm at a place where I actually have the means to fund my music. Whereas before, sure, I was on a major label, but I was barely making rent. And I was living in LA trying to make that dream happen. And so I personally feel more secure in like, okay, I can pay a mortgage and still do music and help people with Backline in my day job. And so I think it really just really comes down to what makes you happy, because I think folks are always going to have these visions of success, especially in the industry. But I don't know, I wasn't the happiest when I was signed to a major at all. And so I think it really does depend on what will bring you happiness and what you value as success.
Terra, as you were, describing some of that stuff, I was just thinking, we all want to be children. Like when, everybody wants to go back to a time when they think they were free to do anything and just play all the time. But as children, we were not allowed to eat French toast every day, or like stay up as late as we wanted to finish that book or that movie, or go out playing music or whatever. Like, there are certain benefits to being an adult. We can eat French toast whenever we want, we can stay out as late as we want, and also in exchange for that, we do have to pay our rent. And I feel very lucky that my quote unquote side hustles feel like I'm contributing in a meaningful way to other people's lives and to the world. And they don't feel disconnected with my work as a songwriter. Of course, my favorite thing is to sit around and write songs and then to get to perform them and sing them and connect with people in that way. But it's so gratifying to be able to Katt, we were talking before we went live about the grant programs that we offer at the Sona Foundation. And it feels so absolutely wonderful, like such an honor to be working at the Sona Foundation and to be able to help other songwriters, in ways that they need the help, or, to teach creative writing to my students at Antioch University, like to help them pull out the stories that are inside of them, and to be of service in that way, to be both healed myself through my songwriting and through my day jobs, and also to be a source of healing for other people in my songwriting and in my day jobs,
Well, that leads to perfectly to this next question of what lessons have you all learned? And Ari, I'd love for you to join in on this as well, from your day jobs or side hustles that maybe you've incorporated into your day-to-day life and or your music.
Go ahead, Katt.
You guys are so polite. There's a book, I think her name is Jenna Fisher from The Office. Is that her name?
Mm-hmm.
And it's based off of her experience moving to LA and becoming an actor, but it applies to a lot of things. And she says something in the book about have a side hustle and be good at it.
Mm.
So I think that the connotation maybe for some of those, the fear that stemmed from a lot of the people that didn't want to hire a songwriter or a musician is because maybe there was some flakiness, no call, no show, unreliability, things like that. So I think just being really communicative and transparent about your goals, and also like when you are at that job, you are at that job. So just making sure that you show up and you're fully there. And you said lessons that you've learned that you've used in your songwriting as well.
Yeah, if that's happened or just in your day-to-day.
I think just going back to being resourceful, because I've always worked in places that, like my first ever bartending job was where I also went to the open mic twice a week. So I think I just always tried to keep it, or working in music venues, just keeping it in a way where I could use it as a resource to bring to the songwriting space. But I will listen to everybody else's responses so I can think of more.
Sounds great.
A couple of years ago, I keep a journal. I kept a journal since I was a kid, and I was kind of searching for something that I hadn't ever written about before. And I just found myself thinking about like, what were my earliest jobs? And I went all the way back to babysitting. And then when I was 14, one of the families I babysat for, the father owned a printing shop. He made business cards and, that kind of invitations for weddings, that kind of thing. And he needed someone to file the negatives, because back then, it was all in real film and negatives. And so I was working in the back filing the negatives. And then I was sitting in the front of the office at a typewriter. There were no computers at that office. And I was sitting at a typewriter. And then years later, I was a house painter. I worked in a lot of different restaurants as a cook. I was in front of the house serving or back of the house cooking. For a short stint, I was a photographer. I was a traveling photographer, took pictures of babies and pets. That lasted a very short amount of time. And, when I first moved to LA, I worked for a catering company, and then started working at ICM Talent in celebrity endorsements. And then later worked in other behind the scenes music industry things. And I found myself like in my journal, just writing like, what is one thing I learned from every job I ever had? Not necessarily like every industry type of job. Like, what did I learn from babysitting? What did I learn from being at that print shop? What did I learn from taking pictures of pets and babies, and from standing on that ladder and painting that house, or cooking in the restaurant, or, any of the other things? And, some of them I had to really dig and think, the lessons that we learn from each job aren't necessarily, exactly what the job is about. Like maybe it's like, oh, I learned how to deal with that very difficult situation, or that boss, or I learned that this is not the right fit for me. Like, what did I learn about myself or the world, or how to, be a member of society, or creatively? Like what did I learn musically from that? And it was, I don't know that I have a specific, there were just so many things. I don't know specifically what I might share right now. Well, except for I told you guys as we were getting ready for this fireside chat, that I just got back from a couple of days at this folk dance and music retreat that I spent a lot of time at in my 20s. And I first went there as a musician, and then I loved it so much there that I joined the crew, and I worked there all summer long for several summers. And, you know, I learned a lot there. And part of it was that there were all these different musical traditions that came through this particular retreat center every week. But also I learned how to make pie. And I have a song about making pie where it's like in the song I'm thinking about the instructions of like how to work with the dough and and like what did I learn from making pie and who taught me that and what is metaphorically like how does that apply in the rest of my life, you know, and so it has filtered into those lessons have filtered into my songwriting in some ways.
I love
Um,
that.
I when I think back to all the jobs that I've done throughout and I started also very young. I ran youth services, like religious services for the synagogue that I was a part of. I ran youth sports clinics. I then worked in summer camps all summers, predominantly with younger kids. And then when I was in graduate school, and actually when I was in college, I had little jobs and different things. I worked for the admissions office. But then when I was in grad school, I worked retail. I worked at Best Buy for 4 years. And then I worked venue staff, security. And through all those jobs, it was all customer service related jobs. And I learned very quickly that everybody on this planet needs to work a retail or a customer service job at some point in their life because especially while doing those jobs made me a better therapist while I was in school, and being a therapist also made me a lot better at those jobs. Where even I spent years working the front door of a very large venue, and I had to tell people no sometimes, or people would get upset, and I had to learn how to de-escalate people, and I had to learn to really talk to people. And I'm not the most physically large human being working security, so my words were going to be a lot more powerful than me trying to throw somebody out, because that's just not the way I was gonna do things. So I realized that throughout all these jobs, it learned me to recognize other people's perspectives, understand that if people are upset, it probably doesn't necessarily have to do with me, and I could just be their sounding board. It also made me realize that if I was in their shoes and I had had their childhood or their upbringing or whatever it is, that I may have that perspective as well. So though I may not agree with it, or I may very much disagree with it, I can at least understand why and where that perspective came from. And it just made me more open-minded going into just general relationships, because I had to interact with so many different people throughout this world. And so just both of those really complemented and made me just I think, a more open-minded person into my adult life, because I've dealt with so many people.
I really love that. I really appreciate you saying that, because I do feel, looking back at my own jobs and various things, I feel like I've learned so much about, how to relate to people, how to empathize with people. And I feel like that really does translate with being a leader on the stage, knowing how to connect with individuals and knowing how to just the ins and outs of the industry. That's kind of why I wanted to get into being a music publicist. I wanted to learn that side of the industry and like, what does it mean? How do people get their music out there? How can I help people get their music out there? And now working with Backline, really helping folks with their mental health and accessing those resources. So I feel like there's just so much to learn and to gain from having worked side hustles that you really can incorporate into your day-to-day in this industry. I know we only have a few more minutes, so I want to ask Ari, for those watching this conversation, you know, there's a lot of shame, like we talked about, a lot of preconceived notions about having to work a day job and while also being in the industry. How can individuals reframe that narrative and, instead of internalizing it as failure, embrace it?
We've already mentioned a lot of this, I would say, and it really comes with a really strong mindset of your side hustle is your very strategic move to actually like sustain your creative freedom. The longer you can sustain your own creative freedom, the more creative you can be and the more chances you can take. So it is you investing into your artistry, into your ability to produce your art and share your art. And as we kind of mentioned, it's all part of this unfortunately unknown journey, but as long as you feel like the progress is still continuing, then the journey is still continuing. Once you convince yourself that the journey has ended, getting out of that rut is going to be one of the more difficult, because you've assumingly, and from what we've said today, you've been hearing from so many other people that the journey has ended or it should end, but it is our own mindset that's delaying that. So once you've committed to that, then that's when you're really going to get stuck. Even very different than like what Arielle said about, I'm going to take some time, and then realizing later that I didn't quit. I kind of tabled it, and I came back to it and allowed myself to get back to that ability to continue moving forward. And then, just to remember that having these additional supplemental incomes, they just reduce the pressure of your art. And when you can reduce your pressure to take more chances, to reduce the pressure and actually feel like you can take more chances, you'll relax, you'll experiment with something. Suddenly you're going to find a whole new skill that you maybe had never tried or just wanted to try. And now the audience is loving it. And you're like, I never thought I could go down this lane. But, there are so many musicians that I know who still give lessons when they're home or teach a class while they're home, because when they're touring, they're busy. And then when they're home, if they're home for long periods of time, I'm not going to say they're bored, but they have time to do some of these other things. So why not make a little bit extra cash while you're doing it? But yeah, it's really all about a really solid mindset that you're trusting yourself.
I love the word. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I love the word strategic, because it's so easy to get down on yourself. Like how many times I threw out my apron and I said, I'm never going back, and I'm full time. I'm fully in. And then I'm like, oh God, I got to get my apron out. Like I got to go back. So I think just remembering it's a strategic move. I love that word. I want to put that on my wall, because that's like a power word. But I also wanted to ask you about burnout. If you had any tips on, I know I gave mine, but I would love to hear maybe your tips on that without cutting Terra off.
No, that's perfect. That's a perfect.
No. Burnout comes in so many different places, and one of the hardest things is to recognize that you're experiencing any kind of burnout. And what you really need to try and start to kind of focus your mindset on is that when you start to feel like your wheels are spinning, and not that you're just in like a creative place where you're just not producing what you want, but like you really don't have the energy to get moving. You're doubting yourself all the time. Maybe even you're creating something that's relatively good, or at least it could be polished to turn into something really, really good. And now you're just not even having the motivation, and you're just shelving a project. These are the times when step away, take a break. And a break could be an hour. It could be a 10-minute walk around the block. Allow your nervous system to just reset. So that way you're trying to get that next dopamine hit where you're seeing that positive thing come out of this. And that also could be like, put a project on the shelf for a week and come back to it, but make sure you schedule time to come back to things. Don't just leave them be and say, I'll get back to them when I have time, because that's just encouraging yourself to keep delaying things and prioritize other things. And then the last thing is, you can use your art for obviously work and to make money, but also use your art to just express yourself. Find time to play music that you may never release, or record music that is released just for you or your friends, or find a hobby that is nothing to do with the music industry that just also allows you to really have the opportunity to just separate yourself, but also get that enjoyment of whether it's yoga or a sport or you do anything on this planet. Like, don't limit yourself just to what you feel like you have to do to make money. Also allow yourself, again, it's strategic, where if I can go to the gym twice a week, then I know I can also stay in the studio an extra day late. Like, these things relate to each other. And that's how, those are just honestly simple ways to kind of just look for some of that burnout.
I love that. Thank you so much, Ari.
Yeah.
All right, last question. I would love to know, what does success look like for you now? Arielle, why don't you kick us off with this one?
What does success look like now? Well, I want to say something about the pandemic, which was regarding side hustles. In that period of time when we were all in quarantine and all the music venues were closed down, and that was, about 2 years into that is when I started working for the Sona Foundation. That was when I really, really came to appreciate on a new level all these different side hustles and just that diversification of income and the different, not just as a side hustle to keep my music afloat, but to recognize that diversification does create more stability. And so I feel like, and the other thing that I found with my various side hustles and day jobs is that that's where a lot of my audience has grown from. When I've met people through these other industries, whether it's the music industry or creative writing or Sona Foundation or the house painting and the photographing and the cooking in the restaurants or whatever it is, like over the years my communities have I have gotten out of the music community into these other communities and that have been really awesome communities. And then when I show up with a song, those are people that might never have heard my music otherwise. And so I think that when I think about success for me now, it very much, maybe 100%. I got to think about that, like the percentage, but it's very much about connection and what is the purpose of art in general or music or songs. What do I love about music? The music that I love, the art that I love, it helps me to feel connected to something inside me, but also something greater than myself or connected to another person or an experience. So for me, success now with all the side hustles includes being able to be, to feel empowered as an adult, to be able to make adult choices, make sound choices, and to notice when I'm feeling burned out or exhausted about something and to be able to care for myself, radical self-care, in a way, but not in like a hyper radical way that is like not a trauma way of being, caring for myself, but in like a supported way, like knowing that I have a CPA and, I have, we were talking about CPAs earlier, but just like knowing that I have like the teams around me, whether it's a doctor, a dentist, a CPA, a car mechanic, the grocery store where I know I can get, whatever it is. So success means like feeling like a whole human, I think. And then musically, what success means for me is feeling like I'm connecting with people, like I feel connected with them and they feel connected with me. And somehow that's through either recorded music, or live performance.
Love that. Whole human.
It's not a metric. It's like, it's really interesting. It's not like, oh, I arrived in Paris. It's like, oh, I thought I was going to Paris, but I've had this whole like journey on the way there. And I landed in, Mumbai. I don't know, like I landed somewhere else, but it's like, well, I think what I wanted even more than the specific destination was the journey as a whole. And to spend my life on a journey with music feels like the most beautiful thing.
Katt, what about you?
Well, when you originally asked the question, I was blank. And after hearing Arielle talk, I realized that there are multifaceted answers because my original answer, I didn't even think about finance, like financial success. I thought about like music success, kind of like, well, I want to wake up every day and do what I love. And I do that. And I think giving back is a huge one. Like you said, when I was feeling super lost in LA, the first thing I did was, well, how can I be involved? How can I give back? So Sona was something that helped me out tremendously. And so I started volunteering at the Warrior Awards and different things like that. And that led to other opportunities as well. And I'm always looking at different ways to give back. And then I decided during the pandemic as well that success, what I would be okay with and feel whole as a human. One day in a million years from now, when I leave this earth, if I leave and every creative idea is tangible. So whether that's like even just the concept of an idea written in a Google Doc, it doesn't have to be a fully produced thing. But if every idea I had, I was able to get on a piece of paper, I'd feel really good about that. Sounds overwhelming, but way less overwhelming than it needs to win a Grammy. Right. And then financially, I was even thinking about that too. I'm like, well, yeah, my passion, I want that to be my career, of course. But even the people who are the most successful musicians, they have empires because they get that song, but then they start a beauty brand and they start a clothing brand and they start a liquor brand and they open a gym and so it's really, I don't think anyone really relies solely on music to make their money. Like, let's be real.
That's a good point.
I think, like you said, Arielle, like something that's always been a huge passion of mine is yoga, or I've been baking every day this week. I've made a different flavor cookie every day this week. So just being a whole human, like you said, and doing what you love and letting the financial aspect, trusting that it will be there, just doing what you love and leading with that and trusting that the finance will follow and doing what you have to do in the meantime and doing it proudly. That feels successful. That feels good.
That feels really great to end on.
Amen.
I really, really appreciate you all so much for taking the time to be honest and vulnerable about your various trajectories in life. I think it's really going to help a lot of folks who are currently juggling and balancing side hustles and day jobs and their passion. So thank you all so much for this conversation. I loved it. And I really learned a lot, took a lot of notes as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Terra, for being
real. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Katt, and thanks, Ari and Terra. Usually I'm I'm producing this show, and at the end we do a little recap for a couple of moments, but we are both in conversation here, and thank you for doing what you do and having me.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I'd love learning even more about you on being on this other side. So this was excellent. I love this conversation.
Yeah, ditto. Well, let's do it again next month, shall we?
Absolutely.
All right. I'll see you. Take care. And thank you all for being here, for being a part. I would love to hear in the chat or, send us an email at hello@sonafoundation.com. But if you are willing, add your thoughts into the chat. What is your side hustle? What have you learned from it? Just maybe answer those questions that Terra posed to us. It'd be really fun for us to read what you have to say. We are here every month doing the Fireside chats and always touching on new topics, talking with new songwriter guests. If you have a topic that you would like to hear us cover, or if you know someone who you think would be a great guest on the show, please reach out at hello@sonafoundation.com. And if you're not already on our email list, in addition to our Fireside chats, we also have other programs, other resources, lots of resources on the website, and always rolling out new things. So I hope that you'll join us on the mailing list so that you can just be in the loop and know what's going on here. Until we see each other next time, take good care and be well.